Okay, Dad.
Now this is just before you get started. I wrote to my brother Dick, who never forgets a thing.
Uh-huh.
That was 2001.
Mm-hmm.
I postponed my promise to our kids to put together my memoirs, and so this year I want to do it. As Dr. Shapiro told me after my foot bout with spinal meningitis and infectious mononucleosis, that the fever I had then might have killed memory brain cells, and he did. That was, when they gave me up for dead for 10 days.
Yeah.
Spinal meningitis.
Yeah.
I'm using that as an excuse now that I'm having a hard time remembering my earlier years. Don was no help other than we had a named Buddy. So I'm asking you to fill me in with things like correct dates in the following, when Dick was born, Victory Avenue, I didn't know that.
Mm-hmm.
Bob was born on 1020 State Street.
Mm-hmm.
25, oh, we lived in an apartment building.
In 1925
Yeah.
on State Street.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
In 1927, we moved to Astoria, Long Island, and we were there 8 to 10 months. Never moved back because we both came down with spots on our lungs, Dick and I.
Oh.
And we had moved back to the country. That was connected.
Uh-huh. 1928.
28, moved to Linden Street, where Don was born, and Ellis Hospital.
Uh-huh.
So you and I, 28, 20, went to Lincoln School. I don't know if it's 26, 28.
Mm-hmm.
Moved to 79 James Street.
In 1931.
Yeah. And in 1933, we moved to the top of James Street. So we couldn't pay the, couldn't get it.
Mm-hmm.
In a flat, downstairs or upstairs.
Mm-hmm.
So downstairs. From there to the corner of James and Becker. And that's the house that with Dick and Mom, Ken lived. Dick was in service, but I was overseas and I sent money back. Dick was overseas,
Uh-huh.
so that they could buy that house in James and Becker.
Oh.
And I had a couple $1,000, which was a lot of money then.
Yeah.
Because I was flight pay and everything.
Mm-hmm.
And so I sent it all back, and they bought the house. They paid me back $5 at the time. And so, so I never, anyway.
And that was, you moved there in 1936, but then they bought it after you sent them the money later when you were in the war?
Well, let's see, it was 36. Yeah, it must have.
Uh-huh.
Probably because,
So
wait, that's the corner. No, that wasn't the one.
Okay.
No, that wasn't the one. That's before.
So these are questions that you sent to Uncle
Dick.
Dick.
Yeah.
Like
And here's when we lived, when we both went in service, so that was before.
Okay.
So when did you go into service? He went in,
For two-year terms? Is that what that-
no, that's February
Oh.
2nd, 42.
Oh, I see.
When did you get discharged? Well, he told me 45.
Uh-huh.
Did you and Mom move to the house on Becker Street, or when? And so this is the one. Let's see, that's the address.
And you also moved with us in 1946.
Yeah. Let's see. Tell him that Dick's handwriting is worse than mine. I'm getting
Please
shaky.
help.
Please help. Hope you're both in good health. Anyway, those were the dates. Isn't it something how many times we moved?
Mm-hmm.
That's one of my cousins. She just died in 91.
Mm.
I was born there, moved to Astoria until we wound up. That's when we left for service, and then he left for service.
Mm-hmm.
So.
A lot of moving around, in not a very big area though, right?
So then, let's continue with that. Wasn't it when we lived on James Street that Mom took in Martha? She was a big Polish gal, nice gal, to help. She rented a place, it was upstairs.
She paid some rent in your house?
Yeah, to help with the rent. And wasn't it there that we had the electricity turned off because we couldn't pay the bill? Could not. thoughts keep coming back like this. How long were we on relief? It seems that we were in junior high school that when we got ourselves off. See, because when we were growing up, I mean, you know, my dad left when I was 10.
Mm-hmm.
So, and after Don was born,
Mm-hmm.
he left. Never came back, never sent a dime.
Mm-hmm.
So Dick and I, we used to go down relief lines to get food and powdered eggs and powdered milk and oatmeal, you know, all the stuff that they.
Is that right?
And yeah, standing as kids, and because Mom was home with
Don.
Don, baby, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And but then in junior high and high school, in junior high, we both had, well, even before junior high, we both had magazine rooms.
Mm-hmm.
Liberty magazine, Collier's magazine, and Saturday Evening Post. We had
Mm-hmm.
3 different routes. And then later, in high school, junior high or high school, I forgot when it was, we got paper routes.
Mm-hmm.
And the time I was in high school, I had the largest paper route in the city of Schenectady.
Mm-hmm.
I had 125 customers.
Wow.
Got 3/4 of a cent of paper. 3/4 of a cent of paper.
What's that about, terrible with this kind of math, but
Well, let's say a cent of
80
paper.
cents.
Then the dollar.
Right, $1 a day
Yeah.
or something.
And the route was long. I mean, and in the summertime it was great. I bought myself first bicycle I ever had.
Mhm.
It was an Ivor Johnson. I bought it for $17.
Mm-hmm.
That was a lot of money.
A 1-speed?
Oh,
yeah,
yeah.
1-speed.
That's all we had. But then we had put a basket in the front.
Yeah.
And we would fold our papers before we started, having a pack on our back, and try to put the folded ones in the basket, and then we'd roll by, fold them up in a little square
Mm-hmm.
and throw them. But in the wintertime, we had to walk.
Yeah.
A long way. And I remember it was 20 below zero weather
Mhm.
many times.
Mm-hmm.
And houses used to have, they'd have a porch, always had a porch,
Mm-hmm.
and then they had a door that you opened up to step into another little area where you
Yeah.
could take off your overshoes and so forth. And then there was another door that goes up in the house or upstairs.
Right.
I used to go in there as a young guy, probably in junior high school. I don't think it was in college, maybe.
Mm-hmm.
And stand there in tears. It was so cold. I was crying, and it would freeze on my cheeks. I mean, it was. And I would stay in there until it would warm up a little bit, and then go out and finish the paper route.
And it probably wasn't that warm in
Oh.
those little.
Oh no, but it was out of the
alcoves,
wind
out
and
of
out
the
of
wind,
the,
a little
the
bit
snow.
warmer.
Yeah. But it was something. But I did more when I was a kid. Did more jobs. I mowed lawns during the summertime, delivered the magazines, delivered papers, worked in an ice cream shop at night,
Mm-hmm.
and it was Monday, Wednesday, and no, well, I forgot. I worked in an ice cream shop at nights, but on Thursday and Saturday, I worked at Bond's clothing store.
Mm-hmm.
And Dick did the same thing.
Mm-hmm.
But in junior high, we took ourselves off. We could do it.
Mm-hmm.
And so then, but we had, each of us had 4 jobs all through junior high school.
Wow.
I mean, I'd come out of high school, we got at 3 o'clock, and delivered my papers.
Mm-hmm.
And then you'd go home and eat, then go to work in an ice cream parlor. And until 10, 11 o'clock at night. And I used to read something in school. We had gym class. That's the only time I ever played a game of sports.
Mm-hmm.
We were too busy.
Yeah.
We couldn't play. In the gym class, you work. And so I remember after the gym class, I had a Latin class.
Mm-hmm.
Took 2 years of Latin in high school.
Mm-hmm.
And I would wake up. Everybody in the room laughing at me because she had called her. Her name was Miss Olive Weeks. I'll never
Mhm.
forget. And she'd say, "Robert, I know you work nights." She said, "But unless you stay awake in my class, you're not going to pass the New York State Regents."
Oh.
Because you had to take a New York State exam.
Yeah.
Well, I fooled her. I got a C. Yes. But
Her
it
name
was,
was Olive, just like your mom.
yeah, yeah. And, but those were the, you know, it was a tough.
Rough years.
So anyway, so Dick, I wrote this letter to see if you can remember, and so he,
Looks like he helped out with some dates
yeah,
and stuff.
and, now here, see, thoughts, oh, well, to help to rent. Wasn't it back then we had electricity turned off, because they did, we couldn't pay the bill.
Yeah.
And somebody told a neighbor, and neighbors used to give us food, ask us. But they turned off the lights, and we were studying under kerosene lamps. And somebody heard, you know, reported it, and said when some folks decided to turn on the lights. So thoughts of coming back, how long were we have to leave? Seems we were in junior high school that we got ourselves off. Again, I'm not sure anymore. I know that Chris, in particular, wanted me to write about the time I was in service, and especially while I was overseas. But I can do that pretty well. Oh yes, how long did we work at Bonds, clothing store? Seems to me it was 2 to 3 years. So he said 1936 to 39 for me, 1938
So whenever for you.
What other jobs did we have? Remember mowing lawns? Did we ever get paid for shoveling snow? Anything you can tell me, I'd appreciate it.
Yeah, that's great. Well,
So,
you know what would be kind of fun is, you know, this this get together we're talking about doing with Dick and Don, the families in the summer. Might be fun to spend some time and you know, talk about some of this if we get a chance. But
okay, that's all stuff that's not related to the war.
do you remember when you decided you were going to go into the service? I mean, do you remember kind of the moment when what was it that happened that you said, I'm going?
Well,
I'm going to go down and
I remember
enlist.
that. The bomb Pearl Harbor, December the 7th, 1941. I had graduated from high school, and I was working at GE in the shop. So was Dick. And I, full of ideas, I was going to join the Marine Corps.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
You had thought about this?
After Pearl Harbor.
Okay, after, it was after Pearl Harbor.
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
And for some reason, you know, Marine Corps sounded romantic, you know.
Yeah. Tough guy.
Got it. Yeah, tough guy. I'm glad I didn't do it. But, and both Dick and I were working GE, and, but he was older than I, so he didn't need permission to join. I did.
From?
My mother.
Oh.
Yeah.
Was that because you weren't?
I was old enough. I was 19 when I went in, but you had to, I wanted to go in when I was 18, I guess. I forgot exactly.
Whatever, yeah.
But he enlisted. He went in the Air Corps. And so I just had to stay. And I was working in the shop at GE, and I hated my job. I was running a drilling machine and a saw and a milling machine, and my hands were always all cut up, you know. And I hated it. And I was on the assembly line for a while too, until I went into the machine shop. But so I was always sort of grousing, you know. We'd go home and eat dinner and with Don and mother, and I hate my job. You know.
Yeah.
And finally, my mother said, she was working at the time in GE. She said, "Why don't you enlist?"
Wow. You said okay.
Yeah. And so that was it. I mean, I couldn't believe she said it, but she said, "We can manage." And so that's when, and I had gone to school. Lou Schroeder, I was friend Lou Schroeder's then. We had gone to school nights to study radio. And so we both wanted to be a radio. That sounded good. Well, he made it. He became a radio operator in the Coast Guard.
Okay.
And he got a medical discharge because he got seasick all the time. He got a pension. He wasn't even overseas.
When he enlisted, he forgot, or when he didn't know he got seasick.
But and they were great me. Here I had all those missions and thought he never saw any action at all. He got a pension. Anyway, it was funny. But so I went in November 10th. Here it is. My Army life started on November 10th, 1942, when I was sworn in at Albany, New York, after having enlisted in Schenectady 2 weeks previously.
Okay.
I don't know if this is interesting enough.
Yeah.
I was at Fort Dix, New Jersey, for a general classification, being that it was an induction center down there. I received my first tinge of what the Army was like. They're receiving my uniforms and so forth, and also my first 2 shots and vaccination, after which I just keeled over in a dead faint. I did.
From the shots?
Oh yeah, well, you walk through like this, you see guys ahead of you getting it, you see guys passing out, and you think, hey, what's going on? Well, they hit this arm, they hit you this arm at the same time.
Just bang, huh?
Yeah, and I walked a little bit, and whoa, and I hit a pot-bellied steel, iron stove. It broke my ribs, but, it was weird.
Yeah.
But that's what this was.
Now, November 10th,
Yeah.
1942, and that was almost a year then after Pearl Harbor.
Yeah.
Okay.
Pearl Harbor was December the 10th. December the 7th.
7th, 1941.
41. Yeah. So
okay.
I worked in GE. See, I just got out of high school in June of 41.
Okay.
And so December of 41, I was working for GE.
Right.
And so.
And was that, when you were in the plant, was that huge news about Pearl Harbor? I mean, were you working when you heard about it, or do you remember? No. But.
Yeah, well, it was quite a, but.
Did you still have a paper route then?
No,
no.
Not when I was,
Okay.
no, I was working at GE.
I was just thinking.
I was making a big salary. I think it was 50 cents an hour.
Yeah.
But,
Yeah, go ahead.
so, and then we were sent to Fort Dix, New Jersey for general classification. I said, I received my first shots, all right. Also, my first 2 shots after was just killed over there. First time in my life, and I hope the last. I stayed in Dix for 3 days, and then was put on a train, destination unknown. After being on the train for 2 days, arriving in Miami Beach, this is from Fort Dix, New Jersey to Miami Beach, 2 days, 12 o'clock at night, we had to sleep in the train. When in Miami, I slept in apartments while getting my basic training, including drilling, hardening up a little, sweating under that hot Florida sun, led a life of Riley with private bath and big hotel beds and so forth. But was glad to get out of there. Food wasn't so good, and I started eating out of mess kits there. Received 2 more shots and was classified for school. I was told I'd go to radio school. But never, however, I ended up going to airplane mechanic school, and that was interesting. When I got on the train again, I asked the guy next to me, I said, where are you going? He said, I'm going to airplane mechanic school. I said, oh, I'm going to radio school. I asked the guy on the other side of it, where are you going? He said, that guy in front of me, everybody in that coach was going to airplane mechanic school, and
you weren't going to radio school, were you?
So I got there and I was mad. I was 19 years old, and I marched in to see the captain. And I said, Captain, he said, just private? I said, I told him my name, and I said, I'm not supposed to be here. I signed up for radio school, I took the test, I passed, and I don't want to be a mechanic. He just looked at me. I never forget. He says, Private, get out of my office. You're here, and you're going to make the best of it. And for 5 months, I hated what I was doing. So, that's why I signed up for gunnery school. I promised my mother I wouldn't fly when she signed for me.
Oh.
I was a bad boy.
Oh.
Let's see. Okay. However, I ended up in gang school. When I got down here in Gulfport Field, Mississippi, after 1 day of KP, I started school, kitchen pretty sure. Now, Dick had gone to airplane mechanic school, and not too far from Biloxi, Mississippi. He liked it. He became a crew chief, but never went overseas. But that's good. I'm glad he didn't.
Now this that you're reading, you wrote this
Oh, yeah.
right then,
Oh, yeah,
back,
yeah.
right when this
Right
was
here.
happening?
3/13/43.
Oh, okay,
I got the date.
okay, all right.
Now I have only about 28 more days here, covering a very easy course, which consisted, I didn't realize, consisted of basic fundamentals of tools, structures, hydraulics, engines, fuel, carburetors, electricity, instruments, props, test blocks, first inspections, where I now am, and 3 more inspection phases, the lab spent out in the woods, as one would spend in Guadalcanal condition. And that's what it was out in the woods.
Mm-hmm.
And then March 6th, or 5th or 6th, of 1943, I took my examination for aerial gunnery school and passed it in perfect order. When I got through here, I'll either go to a factory or gunnery school, because, you know, they send a lot of guys just to learn to, some guys left in mechanics and went for color school.
Mm-hmm.
Anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Made out my, listen to this, made out my 42 income tax return last night. Received statement from GE. This was for 1941.
For a whole year?
$2,288.46 for a whole year.
That was working full time most of that.
Oh,
time,
yeah,
probably.
oh, yeah. Called Mom and Don, called them up in December 21st, 1942, from Mississippi. Then again tonight, March 13th, 1943, felt pretty good both times. Have completely finished school now, April 13th, 1943, after going through 5 days in the woods, which was a good experience that I enjoyed very much. Received my diploma from this school today and just sent diploma with my marks home to Mom. My average in school was 82.5, which wasn't too bad. Now I'm awaiting shipment to God knows where, March 14th. Oh, March 14th, still waiting to be shipped and haven't done a thing. Hope to leave tomorrow to go to Patterson, New Jersey, or someplace near home. Went to New Orleans with a couple buddies, again for 2 days, before leaving for the woods. The first time was on an overnight pass, Christmas Day, when I toured the French Quarter and ate in 2 jacques and bought my garrison hat for $6. This time we slept in a USO as before and ate in Arnaud's, another famous French restaurant. Went swimming in the YMCA pool, in which one of my pals almost drowned, and toured French Quarter again. Came back to the train. Called Mom and Don up again from the USO club. Only took about a half hour to go through. They sounded swell to go
To get the call through?
Yeah.
What day, was that on, was that Christmas Day? Or
no.
I couldn't tell when that was, but that's okay.
Yeah,
That's okay.
but,
They sounded swell.
yeah, sounded swell. I'll use that expression a lot. No, there's no date here. Received my PFC rating while in Gulfport about March 15th, 1943. That's 1 strike.
Mm-hmm.
After graduating, I stayed waiting to be shipped for 16 days and 2 days of KP, which was about the only thing I did the whole time. I received my shipping orders on Wednesday, April 28th, and left on the 30th for gunnery school. I'm on the train now, riding in style, Pullman, eating in the dining car, and so forth. Heard from Sergeant in charge that we are headed for Las Vegas, Nevada, a long way off. Have gone through the following states so far: Louisiana, Arkansas, Texas, Oklahoma. Now I'm in Missouri, then Kansas, Nebraska, Wyoming, where we stopped for 3 hours at Cheyenne, Utah, and then Nevada, where we stopped at Las Vegas.
Wow.
I was on the train.
That's amazing.
Gunnery school was swell. We started off the first week having a physical, the pressure chamber and so forth. Then started school again, half a day and a half a day out of the range. I did very well in school, only had 4 marks below 90. We had on the average of 5 tests a week. On range, we started off with shotguns. Trap, first time I held a shotgun. I hit 16 out of 25. The next day we had skeet. Had that for a few days, skeet from a turret. We stood on the back of a truck, and they had a turret there and you shot skeet. In moving, you know, you had to move the track. And did pretty good from turret head. I was the second highest in the class. Then ground-to-ground firing from turrets and handheld caliber 30s and caliber 50s. That was tough. Those were heavy. 50s especially. The last 2 weeks, first spent at Indian Springs, we spent flying. First week at AT-6s, that was a 2-passenger plane, and the pilot in one, and we were in the back, and it stood up with a single machine gun, and shot at pulling, what do you call it? Another plane was pulling a long target. Or first week in AT-6s, next in AT-18s. I can't remember what the difference was. First time I went up, was sort of nervous, but boy, I really loved it. June 22, we graduated and I was promoted to sergeant. Received my aircrew wings and qualified as an aerial gunner. Shipped out the 23rd for Salt Lake City Replacement Center. Well, and see, all of this, well, go ahead, I'll finish. While at Las Vegas, I took my aviation cadet exam because while I didn't want to be a mechanic, so I signed up for gunnery school. In gunnery school, I thought, well, I'm going to fly the plane, I might as well fly in the plane, I might as well fly the plane, so I signed up for the cadet program. And this is what saved my life. I mean, had I just gone from gunnery school overseas, I wouldn't be here today. Yeah, because, I mean, the gunner didn't last very long. I mean, it was, the fighters were terrible. And see, this is all going on when I was, so I was in Salt Lake City, on the 23rd, was put in a potential cadet barracks, and June 29th, I went before the cadet board and passed my physical exam, which was really tough. Now I'm awaiting shipment again, this time for a month overseas training, and then 5 months of college. And that was in Catawba, Salisbury, North Carolina, Catawba College. Met a wonderful girl here, Betty Engel. Nice, this was in Salt Lake City. Nicest girl I've ever met. I really like her. Mormon. She was half Mormon and half Catholic. She had a choice. She said when she turned 20, I guess, 21 maybe, which one she wanted to go to. We never did find out. But she wrote to me the whole time I was overseas.
Really?
Yeah. So I had two girls who wrote to me. One was, you'll hear about later.
Where did you meet her in Salt Lake City?
Salt Lake City.
Where?
Oh, I don't know. Probably Gans.
Okay.
Received my shipping orders, much to my disappointment, and left on July 22nd. I spent 5 days and 5 nights on the train, and finally arrived back in Miami Beach, Florida. Had a nice trip, having nice layovers in Pueblo, Colorado, Memphis, Tennessee, and Atlanta, Georgia. I also spent my 20th birthday on the train and received a piece of birthday cake in Newton, Kansas, when we stopped for about 15 minutes. In my estimation, Colorado is the most beautiful state I've been in the West, as far as scenic beauty is concerned. The states I went through are as follows: Colorado, Kansas, Mississippi, Arkansas, Tennessee, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, and then Florida. Wow. It's all train. Oh. We stayed in Florida a month, drilling, listening to lectures, and so forth. I shot my first rifle then, firing 50 rounds with caliber 30 Springfield. We first stayed in the Winter Haven Hotel, and we were called QACs, or Qualified Aviation Cadets. Every day during PT period, we went swimming. Finally, finding this difficult by the presence of jellyfish in the water. Oh yeah. wore campaign hats and leggings and got our first taste of what cadets were like. We were all overjoyed at finally getting our shipping orders. However, it did split up our group, sending us to various colleges. We arrived at the train station, I forgot all about this. We arrived at the train station and learned we were going to Salisbury, North Carolina to Catawba College. What a disappointment. None of us had ever heard of it. I took about a day to get here, going through Georgia and South Carolina, still a long way from home. We were met by the CO, commanding officer, and the CS started, cadet training, I don't know, started immediately. We received quite a surprise to be taken out of the college in beautiful cars, out to the college in beautiful cars, Cadillacs and so forth. From that time on, our opinion of the South started to change. Never before had we been treated so nice by people that were so hospitable and so forth. We ate 4 at a table in the college dining hall and had plates and so forth, the best food we've ever had. 3 men to a room in a dormitory. Zortman Hall. Loads of ants and mice are our only complaint. Started school, took physics lab, 2 periods, PT, math, all math. Lunch, geography, and then physics lecture. An hour of drill, supper, and off at 9 to 10 for study period, and then lights out at 10. 3 months of this, and then last month, 2 periods of history, CAR, civil aviation, and navigation in English. PT drill, shipping orders were canceled. We now have been here an extra week. No homework and so forth. Did pretty good here. Only doing something once. Only.
That's okay.
What? Fully detailed. I want 3 tours. But I've spent 4 of the nicest months of my Army life here, but I'm anxious to go on to classification. Just got my first brush cut. All set for pre-flight. This is the place where I saw my mother and 2 brothers for the first time in 11 months.
Down there?
I never got a furlough.
They came down to see you?
Yeah. Rich having a furlough, and they all came down and spent 1 weekend, indeed a memorable weekend. 11 months, I never got out.
Wow. And did they take the train down, or did they drive? Or?
No,
Train. Okay.
Went to Nashville, Tennessee, and stayed about a month. Washed out as a cadet as standards were raised. Earmarked, qualified, they said. From Nashville, went to Tampa, Florida. Well, the reason in Nashville, as I remember it, wasn't for that, because the Battle of the Bullshit thing.
Oh.
When we wiped out the whole field and put the guys in the infantry.
Oh.
But as I recall, I was already a buck sergeant, from gunnery school.
Mm-hmm.
So I just was, from Nashville, went to Tampa, Florida, Plant Park, where I stayed a little over a month and spent a lot of time in St. Petersburg, Florida. One person who I know a lot of clean fun is Dusty. Well, Dusty was a gal that, I can't remember her last name, all the guys wanted to go to bed with her. She had the biggest, but I was a good dancer. She loved to dance, and the guys were all jealous. They tried to date her, but she was one. Just went out with me. But she, again, wrote to me the whole time I was overseas. She wanted me to go to bed with her. I said, oh.
Good, clean fun.
Yeah.
Good for you.
That's
probably what she liked about you.
I made a vow, I told you about this, I wouldn't be like my father. He was always chasing me. And I said, I made a vow. So it wasn't the fact that I was a Catholic or anything else, but I just said that was it.
The way you wanted to live your life.
And I told her, and she respected me, and that's why she went out with me.
Yep.
I mean, I know that.
Sure.
She wrote to me the whole time. I went to see her after I got out. She lived in Detroit. she said, "Have you changed?" I said, "No." And Mom was the first woman ever known. Is the first, only woman ever known. I then went to Avon Park, where I went through about 3 months of RTU, or overseas training. Worked with my crew and made many new friends. From Avon Park, Florida, we then went to a staging area, Hunterfield, Georgia, where we received all our overseas equipment and a brand new plane. I got the number of the plane. Shot down on its first mission, and it was. We went on it.
Yeah.
From there, we flew to POE, overseas, in Norton, something overseas, which was Grenadier Field, New Hampshire, where everything was checked and double-checked. We then flew up to Prescott, Maine, and stayed about a week, waiting for favorable flying conditions. I can't say much for the place itself. We then flew to Gander, Newfoundland, only to remain there for about a week. While there, I met a buddy that I went through AM school, and with Jimmy Schofield, who was permanent party there as an instrument specialist. That's a thing. So
now you were on your way here to
overseas.
to
yeah.
Italy, or
yeah, well, yeah.
Okay.
Well, that's good.
Okay.
We then saw our first airplane crack out. A B-17 crashed in the ground and exploded on takeoff, right in front of us. We were the next in line. All crew members killed. We didn't know why it blew up. Could have been sabotage. But to see that plane, but then they cleared it away, and then we were the next one to take off.
And what kind of a plane were you on?
B-17.
Okay.
Yeah. It's the one that we got, brand new. And
this was this was the crew.
Yeah.
that was flying on this bomber, huh?
Yeah. Well, we all flew, as a crew. We trained as a crew.
Yeah.
This was we took off the next day and flew to the Azores, a little island off Spain. The inhabitants were Portuguese, and I was there. It was there that I first knew I was overseas as living conditions started to lower. We stayed a couple of days and then took off and flew to Marrakech, North Africa. It was really hot there too, desolate. Wow. We discovered our next destination was Tunis. We stayed in Marrakech one day and one night. I slept with the plane that night, and I think I was better off than in the tents. I think it was guarded. We then flew to Tunis and took off that afternoon and flew to Genoa, Italy. Yeah. We stayed there 2 days and came to Foggia. It's Foggia, Maine, but that was the name of the airfield. Now, found out George was stationed in Foggia too. But he wasn't in Foggia, Maine. He was in Foggia, but they had B-24s and B-17 fields. So it was a big airfield. And after about 2 hours delay, took off again. That was it. Foggia, Maine, took off again. I flew about 10 miles to Foggia 1, where now I am. I remained here 2 days before I had a mission. However, received no instructions on what to do whatsoever. August 17th, today I went on my first mission. We didn't see any fighters, but they were hit lightly by flak. And I then found out that stuff is pretty dangerous. Ours was the only ship hit in the whole squadron. It had 6 holes in it. Came back on 3 engines.
And where were you now? This was in...
It's flying out of Italy.
Okay.
And I thought, I remember this. Well, here. This is when my mission starts. And I kept results.
Oh, okay. So
Nice, Yugoslavia, marshalling yard, very good results. Blasted hell out of it. Opposition intense, epic flak, no fighters. On my first mission, surprisingly, I wasn't as scared as I thought I'd be. A good reason for this is my guns in the top turret had a malfunction, and the armorer and I were working on them right through the
and the arm over, or Oh, armor,
yeah,
okay.
armor, and I'm working on the right on through
Uh-huh,
the beginning of the flak. Oh, that's it.
okay.
We didn't even have a flak vest on. I then found out that that stuff really was dangerous. Ours was the only ship in the formation to get hit at all. We had about 6 holes, but so this is better, in the vicinity of the tail, thus receiving our baptism, spelled wrong, of fire. We also came back on 3 engines, although it was a mechanical failure and not due to flak.
Mm.
This our first, everyone, everyone said was a milk run, other than a very screwy accident, I guess it was. The Duchess, plane number 544, a plane and dog squadron, that was, they were all named, from the target, let's see, and about 40 miles from the target, began to happen. Nothing seemed to be wrong with the ship, as far as we could tell or see. From all of a sudden, it just raised up like an escalator, about 50 feet, and then slid off the formation to the right. 3 guys bailed out. One of them, a lower ball turret gunner, was flying his 49th mission. Number 3 engine started smoking, but no flames. Then the rest of the crew bailed out. One of them, a streamer. The chute came out of its pack, but didn't blossom open, as the guy probably pulled the cord while he was in the slipstream, and he went down like a rock. A mechanical failure, as it was put down in the books, and so we didn't, I don't think they got a mission for that.
So that was the description of your first mission.
Yeah.
And before we go on to the next mission, you want me to pause this for a second and we'll get a drink or something?
Oh, sure.
Kind of thirsty?
Yeah.
Okay.
What do you want to drink?
Well, let's just see what we got here.
We had control of the air.
Mm-hmm.
We had P-51s and P-38s who were always with us.
Uh-huh.
And so they took care of the fighters.
Oh.
We didn't have any fighters come at us at all.
So it was all flak from the ground. You never had a fighter come out.
Almost.
Uh-huh.
Saw them.
Uh-huh. You shot at them, didn't you?
No.
No?
Nobody knows this. Everybody thinks so, and I would say, how many planes you shoot down? I don't lie, I just say, nobody knows.
Mm-hmm.
I said, all of the guns on a plane, and there were 5 planes in the squadron, they were all shooting at the fighters. I said, these guys, I saw movies later, I just said, I got him. I said, that was a bunch of baloney. Nobody knew. That's how I told everybody.
Uh-huh.
Because, I think, it's funny, you were gunning, you never fired in a plane.
Uh-huh.
Did.
Yeah.
Thank God I didn't have to.
Because if you're firing at a plane coming at you, there's a very good chance you're going to get hit.
Oh, absolutely.
Because you're under attack at that point,
yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Is that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, it was, I've got enough of it. What's that? This thing, I got a hernia when she did that, a strain. And so, in 1971, I had a hernia fixed. In 1970, I had the left one. 1971, I had the right one. Then I had my left hip replaced in 1983, November. I had my right knee, I had a Baker's cyst in the back of my knee. We were in Europe, and before we went, I had this big lump on my knee, and the doctor said it was a Baker's cyst, but he said, and it was hurting. He said, but I'll give you some cortisone, and you'll be all right. Wasn't all right. Over there, we were at a beer hall in Munich, and we were drinking beer, and I was looking forward to drinking some of that beer, and I never saw anything like it. The big German waitress had at least 5 or 6 beers in one hand, 5 or 6 beers, or maybe more. I never saw anybody carry some of these big, But we went, there were picnic tables inside this tent. And I sat next to this young German guy, and he spoke a little English, but not. But anyway, all of a sudden the music started, and boy, everybody get up and get up on top of the tables, and they were dancing, and you know, this guy had me up there, and I thought, what am I doing? I mean, I could hurt my, you know, I had that bad knee, and so I stepped off. I went into the most excruciating pain, and that thing it hadn't worked, you know, the shot, or else I shouldn't have been up there. And I wound up in the hospital in Munich. But anyway, the doctor said, well, it's got to be operated on, but I can do it here. And not that, you know, all German, but this one guy had taken, he was intern in UCLA. He spoke perfect English. So anyway, that was...
And that was when you were in the service?
No, no.
No. That's what happened to your knee.
Yeah.
And then the surgery was in when? The knee surgery?
Knee surgery was actually in 1985.
Oh, 85, okay.
Baker cyst.
Okay.
Then, in 1986, we were in Jerusalem. And boy, my knee just went to pieces. And I wound up in an Arab hospital over there. And again, the guy said, you better not have operation here. Boy, do you get one. No, in 86, I had my right knee done. And prior to that, I had a blood clot. That's what, you know, that's what the doctor. Anyway, in 1991, I was waiting to get my right hip replaced. And I said, I was right outside the operating room. And I said, called the nurse over there. I said, something's wrong. I said, I feel terrible. She said, well, it's a shot that you just got in your hospital room. I said, no, I've had this before. I said, something's wrong. They took my blood pressure, it was 60 over 40 or something. Next thing I knew, it was in critical care, and I had a pulmonary embolism. Then I had my right hip replaced in 1990.
But was that, you didn't have the surgery
No.
for pulmonary?
No, I had to wait. And they put me on 12 aspirin a day to dissolve it. And had I not had a good, healthy stomach and thinking so much beer, I would have been covered. So in 1991, I had my right hip replaced. And in 1992, no, I didn't have this wheelchair. I've got a wheelchair and a chair, but I didn't have surgery on it. I don't know why it's on here. 1995, I had the left eye cataract replaced. The next month, I had this one done. And then in 1998, I had a spike, one of these TIAs, a stroke. And then in 01, 1301, I had my left hip restored,
Restoration. But what were the first two or something on there?
Well, spinal meningitis.
Well, no.
That's polio. And spinal, that's the back surgery. And when I got in the hospital, I got
the hernia. Okay.
And then a year later, I got this is reversed, left hip go.
Okay.
But left hip replaced.
83. Okay.
Right knee, Baker cyst,
Yeah.
85.
Okay.
Good, we did this at the computer.
Well, that's a good idea.
So how many were there altogether?
Surgeries, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9.
9 surgeries total.
Including the eyes.
Oh, I forgot about those. You've got the hernias on there?
Yeah.
And the appendectomy?
Okay, so Dad, that was you covered your first mission,
Right.
and the second mission then was what date?
Second mission was August the 18th, 1944. It was actually the second and the third because we got credit on a very bad mission, bad target and so forth. We got credit for 2 missions, and so this was second and third. It was Palesti oil fields. And I consider that one of the roughest missions I ever had, one of them. Because up on the top turret, as I looked ahead toward the target, all I saw was black puffs, so thick that you could, it seemed you could get out and walk on them. But they weren't just puffs of black smoke, they were what they called flak, and flak was exploding anti-aircraft shells that sent out hunks of steel fragments, and that's what did so much damage. But
this was in Yugoslavia?
This was in Yugoslavia, Palestine oil fields. And the results of our bombing that were very good. In fact, as my diary says, the rumor had it that we were to receive a citation. But I said, however, I believe it fizzled out. But the opposition was intense, accurate, heavy flak. Fortunately, there were no fighters. Today I found out what heavy flak was like. It was known as a rough mission and one of those maximum effort affairs, and we were all plenty scared and had plenty of reason to be. I'm reading this out of a little diary that I kept when I was overseas. We made our bomb run about 7 minutes and saw this black stuff coming out. And I don't believe there was one man on the ship that didn't foolishly gawk in amazement instead of covering up. When flak bursts, it leaves a ball of gray-black smoke. You can never see it explode. If you did, you'd never live to tell about it. When we finished our run, I looked back and saw clouds of smoke rising from the target, and somehow I didn't feel sorry for those guys below. The more damage would do, the better I liked it. The radio man narrowly escaped getting hit, as I also did. A piece of flak hit my turret right in front of my face. However, didn't come through, and I was fortunate in that respect. Returning over Yugoslavia with its scalloped features and seeing the water of the Adriatic hugging the shore, a clear blue blended into a deeper color further out was indeed a welcome sight. We learned later that there is no such welcome sight as this blue Adriatic. It was sort of a haven. We carried we carried 16 250-pound bombs. And we thought, oh, boy, are we glad that was over. And woke up in the morning and found out we were going right back to Palestine. And so
the next day?
The next day. This was August the 19th.
So that last one was your third mission?
Second, third. Now this was considered our fourth mission. We had escorts this time. We had P-38s and P-51s escorting us. When the pilot, bombardier, and navigator came from the briefing and said, Palestine again, we knew what we were in for and started worrying right away. We were really hit hard. We started on the bomb run, and boy, that stuff started coming up. From my top turret, all I could see was a solid wall of black puffs. Then our ball turret man cried out, I'm hit, I'm hit. And every one of us really feared for him, and we were then plenty scared. I used this word plenty a lot. A piece of flak came right through his door, and he was curled up in this little ball, and it buried in his back. It bruised his back, I should say. It didn't paralyze his back, but the radio, or it sort of paralyzed his back, I guess that was it. The radio man cranked him back up, helped him get out, and then the radio man passed out himself because there was lack of oxygen. He was working without an oxygen mask to get him out. The waist gunner was so scared that he was white and became confused and couldn't help. That was our first Purple Heart in the crew, but not to be our last. The trouble only had begun. We had an engine, number 1, shot up so that we couldn't feather it. The feather means you change the position, so instead of turning the air, it was cutting through the air. And if you had a problem, you could feather these props. Well, we couldn't feather it because we came back all the way with that prop windmilling, a very dangerous thing. When we hit the ground, the engine caught on fire. The pilot gave the alarm and we got out, but fast. The co-pilot grabbed a fire extinguisher, quickly put it out, and the propeller's nuts and bolts were very loose. It wouldn't have stayed on much longer. We were plenty lucky and we knew it. My fifth and sixth mission was August the 22nd, 1944. This target was Bleckhammer, South Germany. It was synthetic oil refinery. It was another very tough target. Again, we were escorted by P-38s and P-51s. We met the worst flak we'd ever seen today. I thought Plessy was bad, but this was worse. And I narrowly escaped getting hit as a piece of flak came right through my turret about a half-inch from my face. I felt this ooze coming down my face, and I thought for sure I had been hit. And you hear stories where you get hit, but you don't feel it. And it took me forever to get my gloved hand up, and I looked, and it was perspiration from my oxygen mask. It was sort of a scary experience. We counted where there were countless holes in our plane. We lost our co-pilot. He was flying in another ship, and a piece of flak came through his ship and hit his right elbow and shattered it. He is now still in the hospital and then will be sent home. His arm will be useless for the rest of his life. Everett Sell, our waist gunner, counted over 25 holes in the immediate area, the vicinity of the waist. He was knocked over by a piece of flak, which tore a big hole in his flak vest, or flak boots, vest, suit. Keep saying vest, a flak suit. Getting up, he discovered a fire right in back, and he went with it. The suction, just, we were kids, we didn't know, and he fell 17,000 feet with no shoot.
Wow.
Terrible, terrible.
Wow.
So, I say it was a horrible death. We continued on within 35 miles of the target, and realizing we would never make it, we dropped our bombs on an alternate target and made an early return. For making an early return, the pilot was reduced to co-pilot for 10 missions and made to fly 52 instead of 50, and we received no credit for the mission. Tough.
So even though you were having all those problems, they still didn't.
I'll get it.
They still didn't give you.
We didn't get any credit for
They
it.
didn't want to let you return early.
No. The record in my little book says the 7th and 8th mission. We hit a target in Czechoslovakia.
Hi, Katie. We're pretty good.
No opposite, no fighters, no flak. It was an easy mission because we again had P-38s and P-51s escorting us. We had 12 500-pound demolition bombs on board. We were a bit expectant and tense as we were briefed on a possible 175 fighters. However, none were seen. As we were on the bomb run, a group off to our left, a little below, started to cross directly underneath us as we were ready and all set to drop the bombs. We closed our doors and made a 360-degree turn and made another run on the target. I thought, yep, because of some screwball, we now invite the whole Luftwaffe and flak up for some fun. However, we dropped them without any trouble and headed for home. We flew at 23,500 feet and we were plenty cold. We then bypassed Vienna to our left, and on the way home, I missed the flak. On the 9th and 10th mission, again, we hit Bleckhammer, Germany. There were synthetic oil refineries. And the escort again were P-38s and P-51s, and without those fellas, we never would have made it back. We were briefed that there would be 132 heavy guns at the target, and they could put up 175 fighters if they wanted to intercept us. We flew in Dog Squadron. There was a lot of flak in the target, but it was a bit late in coming up. We were throwing chaff like mad, and it must have caught them off guard. Chaff was aluminum material, and threw it out. The waste cutter usually threw it out the window, and it would detract the sonar or radar or whatever it had.
Yeah, it says
And,
describe what it is
oh,
here.
Yeah, here it is. Chaff is a tinsel form of paper about 10 inches long, used for the purpose of filling the air over the target with a metallic wave, thus screwing up the radar detectors on the ground. Thank you. Forgot that was in there. A P-51 got hit in front of us, and the pilot bailed out in all that flak. He was probably covering us too closely and received a direct hit. We didn't lose any ships, but we were cut up a bit. On our 11th and 12th mission, we bombed Vienna, Austria. It was an oil refinery. The opposition was intense, accurate, heavy flak, no fighters. We didn't have any chaff along on this trip, but we had loads of Luftposts. Luftpost was a newspaper printed by us giving out the news of the battlefronts as the Army wants them to see it. The flak started a few minutes before the target and continued for a long while afterward. Not too close, but close enough. Our target was 22 miles beyond Vienna proper, northwest of the city, and I thought how odd it was that a city that waltzes made famous could throw up so much destruction to the tune of Tra-la-la Boom Da. I wrote this stuff when I was 20 years old, and I thought it was pretty good.
Yeah, yeah.
The stuff did some damage, and I could see some of the stragglers limping vainly as they tried to catch up the formation on 3 engines. This way was the day Hepting, our boat bombardier, got hit. Only a scratch, however. He did get the Purple Heart. He was very lucky. A piece of flak had come right through the nose. I had another narrow escape as 2 pieces of flak hit my turret right in front of my face. We then headed for home over the foothills of the beautiful Australian Alps, and then onto the Scout coastline of Yugoslavia, and thence across the blue Adriatic. We went over the target at 26,000 feet. On the 13th and 14th mission, August 29th, 1944, we went to a target in Poland, and the opposition was slight, inaccurate, heavy type of flak, but no fighters. And again, the P-51s and the P-38s covered us so that we didn't get hit by fighters. We were supposed to bomb at 28,000 feet, and that suited us fine because the higher the better. We have learned by experience that they don't come up that high many times. We flew a good formation all the way up, and I'm glad they did because our fighter escort was 12 minutes late. The target was covered by smoke, but we let go right into it, sort of a milk run. However, we had quite a time of it. On the way to the target, number 2 engine went out, and we had to feather it. Then number 1 started acting up, and 3 and 4 had carburetor ice. We dropped 12 bombs before the target to keep our altitude, and the other 4 on the target. We headed back all alone, as we couldn't keep up with the formation. We were all plenty scared that we'd be jumped by fighters, and were very grateful that none were seen. This was the day I damaged the inner retina of my eyes, looking into the sun and watching for fighters. The next morning, fighters, all that time, and talk about being plenty scared. I couldn't see a thing for 3 days. I was blind, and but then it passed, and I was able to fly again. But meantime, my crew had flown. So
you missed some missions with your crew while you were.
My crew flew, and I didn't. So
what did they do? Cover up your eyes, or did you just lay there in bed for 3 days?
Yeah. I was in the hospital.
Where were you in the hospital?
In Foggia, you know, it's right, well, maybe it was a hospital.
Foggia, Italy?
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
No, I guess it wasn't a hospital, but I was in bed.
Yeah.
I don't really remember.
Sure.
There was one time I went into town, when I first got there, didn't know any better, I went in by myself, and I wore my wings, and while I was in there, I decided, gee, I need a haircut. So I looked for a barber shop and saw one of these poles outside, I went in, I said, you know, I didn't speak Italian, but, and so I got a haircut, and I thought, well, while I'm getting a haircut, I might as well get a shave. So I said, hey, see, and so I stretched out, and he lathered me all up, and he came after me with a straight razor, and he had the razor right in my throat, and I looked into his eyes, and I saw burning hate. And he says, you bomb Foge. And I said, I said, no, Deutsch, Amerikaner, no, Amerikaner. What Deutsch bomb? Well, we had bomb Foge. And he let me up. But let me tell you, I never went in town by myself again.
Yeah.
I always carried my .45 with me when I went in. I didn't have it that day. Didn't know any better. It was when I first got over there. And because guys,
Ask him where there is. He keeps saying there, but he never said where there.
Yeah, when you, there was in Italy, right?
yeah, in Foggia, the little
Yeah.
town of Foggia.
Uh-huh.
And so they found guys in there dead in town with their balls cut off and sewed in their mouth. That's how they hated us.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you just kind of innocently went
Oh,
in
yeah,
that day, not really.
you know.
You'd think they would have warned you about
Well,
that.
yeah, but, you know, but anyway, I never went in by myself again.
No.
I never went in without a
Did
.45.
he finish the shave?
I never got a shave again.
Did he,
Oh, yeah,
he
he
did
finished
finish it?
Yeah, when I said, no, Deutsch,
He-
yeah, he believed me.
Sort of believed you. Or,
Yeah, I tell you, I was scared on my missions, but I was really scared then.
Oh, it's recording.
Well, we're going to continue this. Chris is going to be asking me questions, and I'm reading out of my two little diaries that I kept when I was overseas. So I'll be looking down, looking up. But I told Chris after we shut off this that I remembered little things that I didn't put in my diary, and one of them was the second mission I had was Palestine, and as I said, it was really bad. When I looked ahead, there was nothing but puffs of black smoke, and they weren't just puffs of smoke, it was flak exploding, and I, from my top turret position, I saw 5 planes get hit and blow up, and there were 10 men in each plane. So second mission was really a baptism in fire because it was a scary thing. Another mission I had already talked about when Chris was asking me was one that we were shot up very badly, and we couldn't keep our power up in the engines. And so instead of flying in the position we should have been in, because we were in tight formation, the plane ahead of us, we should have been here, but we couldn't, so we were here. And a squadron of our own planes, by mistake, flew over the top of us, over the target, and opened their bomb bays and dropped their bombs on not only the target, but also on us. The plane here took a direct hit and blew up. 10 men were immediately killed, and a ball of flame and oil engulfed my turret from that plane. One of the bombs went through the leading edge of our wing, and the plane shook. Oh, it just shook. The co-pilot and the pilot just held that plane, and it was a scary situation. So we had a couple of that mission was really bad. A lot of missions were bad.
those were not milk runs.
Those were not milk runs.
That's what you called the easy missions the milk
Yes,
runs, right?
I did.
So those weren't no milk runs.
No. We got to my 15th mission, and that was September 6, 1944, And there I had indicated in both little diaries that I kept that today we had a milk run.
So what day was this now?
It was September the 6th, 1944.
September 6th,
Yeah.
okay.
And I said, how we hate to get up in the morning, because they always woke us up at 3:30 in the morning to go out and get ready, get our stuff, get our parachutes out of the storage area where they had them, and we didn't keep the parachutes in our tent. We lived in a tent, incidentally. And the tent, we had a half of an oil drum in the middle of the tent. It was cut in half. And we had a belly tank from a fighter plane on the outside of the tent with conduit, not conduit, but pipe leading in from that. And we had a little switch that we would, petlock switch of, I forgot what they called them. So we would open that a little bit and throw a match in the inside the oil drum inside, and that was our furnace. And it was boom, and then we could keep warm in the winter time. It was a little bit scary. All the tents were heated that way. It was
Better than having no heat.
better than having no heat.
And then you were saying, I think after we stopped the tape last time, that when a plane went down or there was a casualty, that you guys would go to the tent of the people that died and just take the Army issue stuff like blankets and.
Yes, when you didn't touch any of the personal belongings, of course, but everybody did this. If they knew a plane had gone down, they would go in, and when we first got over there, I had one blanket and a cot, and by the time I finished, I had 2 blankets, I had an air mattress, and I had a sleeping bag, and those were all from planes that had gone down, and so by the time I finished my missions, I was sleeping in comfort. But those are some of the little things that I remember.
Yeah.
But, so then I've got here the 16th mission was over Yugoslavia, and I say again, HR was 3:30. What a life! We were briefed on 30 guns. That means anti-aircraft guns, but there were a lot more than that. Luckily, we didn't get hit by any flak, so it was another milk run. I'm let's see. Oh, skip the page here. Okay, the 18th mission was Bleckhammer in Germany. It's Bleckhammer was an oil refinery, and one of the things that we had to do was wipe out the oil refineries so the planes couldn't have any oil, and the tanks, German tanks, couldn't have any oil. We also hit marshalling yards a lot, bombed marshalling yards, which were the railroad areas where the trains would come in, and so that would prevent them from using the trains and supplying the troops with. So those were a couple of the targets we hit a lot, and Bleckhammer was one of those. And after Pulesti fell, they surrendered. Well, I guess we did it. We bombed them enough. I guess they moved most of their guns, we used to kid about this, over to Bleckhammer in Germany, because that was probably the second worst target we ever had. It was a bad target. So this was my 18th, and it was the opposition was heavy, intense, and accurate flak over Bleckhammer. No fighters, because as I told Chris earlier, by the time I got overseas, that we had pretty well control of the air, because we had P-51s and P-38s almost entirely covering us almost every mission we went on, and so the fighters couldn't get at us, and that saved our lives. In England, and even in Italy, in the early days, the fighters, Germans, really had control of the air, and they shot down an awful lot of planes. So, again, I was very fortunate in that respect. Like Hammer, I said, the heavy and intense, accurate flak, no fighters, no flak. So, again, it was a tough target, but it was, I said, when we found out we were going to Blackhammer, we all started to sweat it out and had plenty of reason to. We were met by about 190 flak guns, and they were plenty good. I used that word plenty when I was 20 years old a lot. Swell and plenty were expressions that young people used then.
Instead of good and plenty, it was swell and plenty.
Yeah, but I said 2 ships went down, 1 out of our squadron and 1 out of the group. The crews didn't have a chance. The ships just blew up. We then proceeded without dropping our bombs, as the target was covered by clouds and smoke, and we bombed the munitions factory instead, encountering no flak, no fighters, yet it was called a target of opportunity. I had to crank up the bomb bay doors, and that was a job that every once in a while we would have a piece of flak, cut the hydraulic lines, couldn't think of the word, and the hydraulic lines governed whether you could open and close the bomb bay doors. And so, as engineer, top turret gunner, but I was also the engineer, and I had to go out in the bomb bay with a crank, and there was a crank there, and I would have to crank up the bomb bay doors or crank them open, crank them. Usually they would open, but then if we got hit, they wouldn't shut. So I had to crank them up because we couldn't fly that way, and it would be too slow, and we couldn't land that way. And the same thing with the wheels. Sometimes our wheels wouldn't go down because they'd been shot. So I had to crank the wheels down, and that was another. I was a lot stronger there then than I am now. But it was a hard job. But that was the engineer's job, one of them. So that. So I had to crank the bomb bay doors, and I worked my head off, sweating profusely at 27,500 feet. Returning, luckily, with only 2 holes in the ship, another rough one over with. The 19th mission, we bombed Athens, Greece. It was in enemy hands, and it was a shame to think that you had to go to a place like that. But
destroy all that history, and
but
ancient.
We bombed Munich, and we bombed Vienna, and it was. But so we went to Athens, Greece, and my comments on this were the bombing of Greece today was the first time the 15th Air Force hit it, bombed it. We flew all the way down the Adriatic. I liked it because I didn't have to get into my turret until we hit the coast of Greece. It was sort of a milk run too, although it was a long single mission. The 20th mission.
How long were these missions? I mean, when you went out, how were you gone from 5 in the morning until 2 in the afternoon, or?
Usually they were 8 hours,
Okay.
8 to 10 hours.
You were in the air?
In the air. And those were like, we had some that were less. Northern Italy, we bombed northern Italy because when we got over there, Rome and, we were in southern Italy, and Rome and Florence were all still in enemy hands, but then they took over Rome, or we got conquered, I guess, beat them out. Rome was free, Florence was free, and didn't get there. That was still control, but I did get to Rome a couple times, and that was wonderful. But we never, no one ever bombed Rome. It was a no-no, and even
off
though,
limits.
yeah, it was off limits because there were too many wonderful, churches and so forth. So that was one of the things that.
Unlike Jerusalem today, huh?
Yes, unlike Jerusalem
Which
today.
you'd think might be off limits, but doesn't seem to be.
Okay, this is September 17th.
My birthday.
19, your birthday, September 17th?
But I wasn't born.
Oh, no, I was gonna say, no way. Uh, um, 1944, and we went to Budapest, Hungary. Not went there, we flew there to vomit. We flew, I have the number 834, it was called, the name of the plane was Holy Joe. A lot of people in England especially, they flew the same plane a lot of times. We very seldom flew the same plane. Occasionally we did, but we had, there was always repairs to do on a plane, and so we were assigned to different planes at different times. So we never had names on an airplane and things like that. But we flew on Holy Joe today. We were briefed on 194 guns, and we really met every one of them. As we hit the initial point, which was from that point on, you were going over the target. I looked ahead and I thought I'd never seen so much flak, even over Palesti. That's what I say, even at Palesti. It was just a solid wall of black puffs, and excuse me now, this is my diary says, as sure as hell, we had a dead center into it. We were very lucky, however, and only received a few holes. Our tail wheel did get hit, and we didn't know it until we landed. Almost swerved off the runway, but our pilot held it steady, and everything was okay.
Sound like great pilots.
Our pilot was 19 years old, and
really,
he was quite a guy. He was a daredevil, and it was interesting when we were first assigned to a plane in Florida before we went overseas. We took overseas training in flying, and so the object was to learn to fly in close formation, because if you didn't, the fighters would get you. So our pilot was a young guy, and he was sort of a wild man, and he had a buddy that flew with him, and they both wanted to be fighter pilots, but they didn't make it. They were assigned to bombers instead. But in training, the two of them would fly so close that they tipped the wings together of the two planes.
They touched the wings?
They touched the wings, I mean, and hit them, and laughed, and here I am, the engineer, gunner, and something that I never thought of, but for the record, I'll say that somebody once asked me, well, where did you sit? And I laughed. There were no seats in the B-17 except the pilot and the co-pilot, and the bombardier sat on a little stool, and the radio operator had a seat. He had a chair, but he had his own little room. But the rest of us didn't have seats. But on takeoff and on landing, I stood and held my one hand on the pilot's back of his chair and the other on the co-pilot's, and watched the instruments and called out the various pressures and so forth, and things that they needed to know that they were too busy to try to take off and land. But so it was my job to do that. And so I got a kick out of somebody said, where did you sit? Well, I stood most of the time.
You just stood up with no seat belt on, no nothing?
No, we didn't have seat belts in an airplane. There were no seats in the plane. I did wear a parachute after an experience I had. We used to have these parachutes that you have to snap on, but I couldn't wear it. In my turret, standing up in my turret, whereas some people could wear them all the time. Even they could have them on, and the waist gunners could if they wanted to. Most of them didn't, but they could. Or they were right there, they could grab, and if they had to jump off, they could snap it on. I was in a position, as was the ball turret gunner, we couldn't do that right away. So I requisitioned a pilot's chute. So they sat on the chutes, but I stood in my turret all the time with that heavy chute on my back end.
And why did you start wearing? Why did you start wearing it? You had an experience.
Yes. one of the people that, somebody that, the plane was shot up and they all, the fellow said they didn't have time really to prepare. I mean, they were going down, and this guy, we wore, oh, incidentally, we wore heated suits under our heavy fleece-lined jackets and pants and boots. We had heated boots and heated suits. And so you had to take off your GI shoes to put on these heated shoes over the boots, under the boots. So the shoes were always tied together with the shoestrings. So if you had to bail out quickly, you would grab the shoes and grab the chute and go and pull the ripcord, but try to hold on your shoes because you needed shoes if you hit the ground. And this one fellow told us, whether he was telling the truth or not, I don't know. When he came back after plus he was a prisoner of war there for a while until he was released. And he told us that when his plane blew up, he grabbed his shoes with one hand, he grabbed his chute with the other, and he jumped and realized he's in the air and the chute was in one hand and the shoes were, so he said he threw the shoes, took the chute, snapped it on, pulled the ripcord, and it sounds ridiculous, but he said all of a sudden when the parachute opened, the shoes were in the cords coming down and he grabbed them. Whether he made that up or not, I don't know. But it made, you know, I thought, well, I'm not going to be in that position. I'm going to wear a shoe all the time. And I could, because I was in the turret, the shoe was below me, and I was standing all the time. So that
were the heaters battery operated heaters? The suits, were they battery operated or were they electric?
It was connected to the plane itself. And that, I don't know if I have it in any of my notes, but that is another experience I had. Bursts of flak used to come up in fours. Boom, 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 boom. And we were over this target. It was Linz, Austria. It was a really tough target. And we were flying there, and we got hit underneath the plane. The concussion of that anti-aircraft, in addition to the flak, the concussion was intense. And they were rather close, and we were lifted, our plane was lifted 3 times. Not 4, whether the 4th one was before or after, I don't know, but 3 times the plane went just like that.
The flak was exploding below you?
Below us. And it was really scary, and but shortly thereafter, my teeth started to chatter, and I was shaking. And you talk to yourself a lot. You pray a lot, you talk to yourself a lot. And I said to myself, come on, get a hold of yourself. You're scared, but you're not a coward. Now you can handle this, you know. I'm talking to myself, and I didn't realize until we got down to the approaching home base, and I got out of my turret, and one of those concussions had pulled the plug from my heated suit. And it was, you know, we flew in 30, 40 degree, 50 degree, below zero weather because you were up at 29,000 feet. And the windows were, you know, we didn't have any windows in the waist. And there were windows in the front. The pilot could look out a window. In the front of the airplane, they had plastic, and I had a plastic cover over my turret. But the waist was open, and it was pretty cold in those planes, so you had to have heated suits. And I didn't know it. So I now convinced myself, maybe I wasn't scared. No, I was probably just cold. But it was one of those strange things that happened. Okay, let's see what we got on our 21st mission. I said we went to Novi Sad, Yugoslavia. I don't even know where that was, except it was in Yugoslavia. This morning we had 2 2,000-pound bombs and 2 1,000-pound bombs. Usually they were 500-pounders, but it was a heavy load, and we had a full load of gas, and I thought, sure, it would be a long double. Some of our missions, we got double credit, some of our sorties. A sortie was when you went over the target. That's what they called them. but we had a lot of long ones and intense ones, and many times we got credit for two missions, two sorties instead of, so, when I say, some of these were my 20th, 21st, and combined, well, this morning we had these heavy bombs and a full load of gas, and I thought, sure, this would be a long double. When we learned we were going to Yugoslavia and we were hitting a bridge with supposedly only 12 guns, we were greatly relieved. I kept my head up in the turret until about 5 minutes after the initial point, seeing no flak, and just about started to think that it was an easy milk run when they all opened up at once, so close that we could hear them. I quickly ducked and started praying. Well, in the waist and the tail, not the ball turret, but the ball turret gunner and I were the only ones that didn't have a helmet. We had little caps that went, because it wouldn't fit in the ball, it wouldn't fit in the top turret. And that little cap was metal and steel, and I used to think, oh, I've got all my head up in that, I don't have to worry, but it was just covering at the top of my head. But and I'd say our ship shuddered a number of times, and we got hit with a lot of heavy hits. I think I was more scared on this supposedly milk run than I've ever been. After we left the target, the ball turret gunner reported oil flowing out of either number 3 or number 4 engine, and also had a bad gas leak streaming from somewhere. We were, I use the expression again, we were all plenty scared.
Yeah. So Dad, when you say we were hit, you mean the bullets?
The flak. Metal, some of them were huge, and they would put a big hole in the plane.
So these things would come up in they'd shoot these things up in the air, and they'd come up and they'd explode and shoot pieces of metal.
Right.
But then were you also, when the bomber would drop down to bomb a site, would it drop down lower, and would you be getting shot at by ground ammunition, bullets?
No, we were fortunate in that respect. We flew mainly at 27, 29,000.
And you drop your payload or whatever it's called from that altitude?
But the B-24s, another 4-engine bomber, a man across the street flew on he was a pilot on B-24s, and we used to talk, well, we still talk about it once in a while. He used to say, boy, you guys were so lucky, we'd look up and see you way up there, and we were down here getting all the flak, and which wasn't true. They got a lot more than we did because we flew higher, but we still had.
But you didn't have to drop way down to drop your bombs.
No.
Okay.
No, not like a fighter or anything like that.
So when you say the plane got hit that you were in, it was pieces of flak that were coming through, right? Would it go right through the plane?
Oh, yeah.
In one side and out the other?
Well, no, but, well, yes, they could. But, I won't say the other, but we had, the time we hit Pulaski the second time, we counted, it seemed that we counted maybe 100 holes in a plane. It was incredible. I mean, it was, so we had a lot of excitement.
It's amazing that people on the plane didn't get hit by the flak very often.
We had several people.
Yeah.
Ball turret gunner was hit. The piece of flak came right through the metal ball, and he had his flak vest, we call them flak suits, but flak vest on, went right through that, and he was wounded. I think I mentioned that earlier.
Yeah.
That he was wounded, and right through, and the waist gunner, before he died, was hit, and he was hit over Pulaski, and his flak vest stopped the flak, and they knocked him over. And I think I mentioned that he didn't have time to get too scared because he turned around, there was a fire in the waist, and he took a blanket and he beat out the fire. But those flak vests saved our lives. I mean, it's just our tail gunner, who wasn't a little man. People think that, I think I mentioned this, a little man. He was 6 foot tall and a big husky ex-boxer, Golden Glover.
Mhm.
But he requisitioned another flak suit, and he sat on one back in the tail because you sat right. He didn't have a seat, but he had sat. He put one. You were sitting on. He wore the other one because he didn't want people's light to come off and
Yeah.
So we used to kid him about that, but it made sense.
Yeah.
I volunteered to fly my last 4 missions because I wanted to go home with my crew. I'd been hurt. I went blind. I don't know if I mentioned that.
Yeah, you did.
So I didn't fly, and they finished their missions before I did. So I volunteered to fly my last 4 so I could go home with them. And twice I flew in the tail.
Mhm.
And it was just a little scary position.
Yeah.
But so.
And there was a machine gun back there in the tail,
Oh,
right?
2 of them. 2.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, 2. He had twin 50 caliber machine guns in the tail. There was one, and each waist gunner had one. The radio operator had one. The bombardier had one. The navigator had one, and I had 2. The 2 50 caliber machine guns were one on either side of my head, and so we had quite a few. It was a scary thing for a fighter to approach B-17s. There was a lot of firepower going at the fighters.
So, when I ask you this question right now, you have to respond, huh? So did you have any ear protection when those machine guns were right next to your head?
No, just a...
You're supposed to say, what?
What? Well, I do wear a hearing aid now, but...
They didn't have any ear protection, and
no.
were they loud? Were they real loud?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Really loud. And a lot of them.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, the concussion, yeah, the noise was intense.
Did you shoot the machine guns a lot?
Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
was that wasn't part of every mission, but...
No, but, well, we shot the machine guns every time we took off because to test them.
Okay.
We had to test the machine
Okay.
guns, and so everybody...
You just take some shots just to see if they were working.
Yeah. So, yeah, it was loud.
Another question.
Before we went overseas, I mean, we shot at targets, too.
Yeah. Another question I had, did you ever get to bail out of your plane with your parachute in practice? Did you
No.
ever? They never let you...
Nobody ever had a practice. Paratroopers had practice, but no. You didn't, you had no idea except what you were told
Would
that you had to do.
Yeah, and then...
And you didn't know whether that guy that packed that parachute knew what he was doing or not.
So in other words, once you jump out of that plane, it's your first time, and your heart's going to be beating.
Yes.
Plenty scared.
Plenty scared.
Okay.
No, fortunately, one time we had a choice. The pilot said, I don't think I can make it back over the Alps, because we flew out of Italy, and so to get to the targets, we had to fly over the Alps. Beautiful to see, but not so beautiful when you didn't think you could fly back over them, because you were shot up very badly. So many times we came down rather low, and so this one time the pilot gave us a choice. We at that time we had 40 missions. They only had 10 more to go, and the pilot said, I don't think we can make it back. So here's what we've got to do. He said, first, throw out everything on the plane, strip the plane. We threw out our gun barrels, not the housing for the barrels, but the gun barrels. They were heavy. We threw out everything that could be removed from the plane, and finally he said, it's not enough. We're not going to make it unless we drop the ball. And I think did I mention earlier about dropping the ball short?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. Well, we dropped the ball, and unfortunately that's when Shell went with it, but not the ball short gunner, but the waist gunner. It was sucked out with the gun. But even then, it was scary. So he gave us a choice. He said we can all bail out and be interned for the rest of the war, or try to make it back. We had 10 more missions to go, and so I all voted to try to make it back. And we wouldn't have been able to bail out because going over the Alps, wouldn't be enough room, you know, but
You'd die anyway.
we would die anyway, so we just decided that, you know, no, it was before we got the Alps, he gave us that choice.
Oh, okay.
And before we got, he said, I don't think we're gonna make it, even now, but, so, we did make it, but it was scary. They were beautiful to see from a distance, but not when you're looking down and hoping that you're gonna make it over.
So, was he trying to just gain altitude?
Yeah, that's why we
and
had to
he
throw
was able to
everything out.
gain,
Yeah.
and you cleared him pretty easy?
Yeah, we cleared it. I've forgotten how easy,
Yeah.
but, yeah, we got through it, so.
Okay.
Okay, I'd say that this, the Vulture gunner reported that either number 4 engine or number 3 engine was, had a bad gas leak, and the, let's see, oil leak, and then there was a gas leak streaming from someplace. And so I said here, we were all scared of a fire, and believe me, no one felt like smoking all the way back. At that time, everybody smoked. And, I never smoked until I got overseas, but everybody smoked over there. We got back on 3 engines, having to feather number 1. Now, the propellers were at an angle to cut through the air. Well, if they were windmilling, that was terrible. So we had control. We could turn, the pilot could turn so they wouldn't feather as badly. They still went around, but let's see. We feathered number 1, and number 4 was running very rough. When we had parked it and discovered number 1 fuel tank, a line leading to it had been hit and gas was streaming out, another too close for comfort. But we got back with the grace of God. And for these things, because I tried to go to Mass every night. We had a little chapel, chaplain at our base, and we tried to have Mass every evening after, for those that wanted to go.
A Catholic priest?
Yes, yeah. And that's, I will deviate here for a minute so that I'll tell you. On January the, January 3rd, 1945, my little comment on this, again, got up and ate breakfast, received no mail, hung around, ate dinner, another day of inactivity. Now, I was through with my missions here. I'm getting lazier and putting on more weight every day. Went to church at 6 p.m. and found out that the chaplain, Father George Rice, was going to see Padre Pio up in the mountains of San Giovanni, a priest, a Franciscan, actually it's Capuchin, but the Franciscan order, who had the wounds of Christ compressed on his body. He had the stigmata. We learned about that. Up to that point, I never had heard of the stigmata, but this priest told us about it, and he said he was leaving for there at 7:30 on a tour. So I got a blanket, dressed warmly, and we left at 7:45. There were 6 of us that went with him. It was about an hour-and-a-half truck ride up the mountains, and we stayed in a very small hotel near the monastery. I hardly slept a wink all night because of the cold. I had 1 blanket. It was December, and there was a lot of snow around.
Sounds like you said this was January.
January
3rd or 4th. Okay.
We got up at 5:30 a.m. and walked up to the monastery to attend Mass at 5:45 a.m. I was so impressed, words can't describe it. I witnessed a saint saying Mass. Padre Pio has performed a number of miracles there at the monastery. The Mass took 2 hours, and I knelt on his altar like a little altar server. I didn't do anything but kneel there. There were only 6 of us in this little chapel. Now there's a big cathedral because he's been proclaimed a saint. And it took him 2 hours, and I say here, I wrote this, Padre Pio almost let his emotions carry him away. He actually shook, and tears streamed down his cheeks during the Mass. When he held up the chalice and he held up the body of Christ, the host, he was crying. I mean, you could see in his eyes, or I could from where I knelt, that he really saw Christ at that point in time. I mean, it was incredible. I saw, hard to imagine this, but I remember seeing it, sort of an aura around his head. And I knew that I was looking at a saint. I mean, it was no question in my mind. It was just wonderful. We spent the day there going over to San Angelo Rotondo to see the grotto of St. Michael. Well, anyway, just a little description. But it was one of the greatest experiences that I had over there. I was very fortunate. In addition to all these missions and so forth, I had that opportunity, but before that, I got to meet Pope Pius XII. We were in St. Peter's. I was on a rest camp. A rest camp, after so many missions, they sent you on a rest camp to calm your nerves and so forth. And my first one was the Isle of Capri. That was wonderful. We had a great time, 7 days in the Isle of Capri. My second one was Rome. And we were in St. Peter's, and there must have been at least 1,000 GIs from all over the world at the Mass and at St. Peter's, but I happened to be right up front. Well, it wasn't a Mass, I beg your pardon. The Pope was there, and he talked to the troops in 7 different languages.
Wow.
Brilliant man. And so then he came down from where he was standing, talking, and came around and greeted the people in the front. And I happened to be in the front. And I had the great privilege of, and this is funny, I had never gone to a Catholic school. When I was growing up, we were very poor, and it cost money to go to Catholic. I went to public school, and even though Mom took us to Mass every Sunday, but I didn't know too much about my religion, and I saw people, and I thought they were kissing his hand. So that's what I did. I knelt, kissed his hand. Later I found out I should have been kissing his ring. He kissed the ring in veneration of the office, not the man. I didn't know that, but and I jokingly say this, because I have said it many, many times, because he was brilliant, brilliant. I said, you know, he wasn't that smart. He asked me if I was an American soldier. But it was a thrill. But the biggest thrill I got was when I met Padre Pio. That was really amazing. I also was very fortunate that one time the colonel of our squadron, wonderful man, was going to go to Tel Aviv. And he wanted to go to Cairo and then fly over to Tel Aviv. And he got a bunch of his buddies to go with him, but no plane could take off, no matter what you want to do, without an engineer and without a gun, or without a radio operator. And he picked me, and he picked my radio operator to go on this trip with him. It was a nice little, it was at the dead of winter. We weren't flying missions, so we flew to Cairo. We stayed there 7 days. We went in we climbed the pyramids. Now, when I say climb the pyramids, inside those big pyramids, there are little tunnels, and you sort of bend over, but you can go all the way up into the big rooms. There's 2 rooms, one for the king and one for the pharaoh, and one for his wife. And so we climbed in there. It was a tough climb then. I don't know how they are now, but then we also climbed, I would say 1/3 of the way up on the outside. When I say climbed, you jump, grabbed hold, pulled yourself up because big blocks, and we were young, we could do that. And we rode camels, we went to the bazaars and the mosques, and then he said, okay, we were ready. One of the times everybody was in, somebody had to stand guard of the plane, and we took turns on that. I took my turn, but then we flew to Tel Aviv. And Tel Aviv is a very modern city, and the only time that it was overseas that I had a glass of milk. And that's all I drank. I never drank coffee, but,
Except beer.
No, I didn't even
No?
drink beer until I came back from overseas.
Oh.
I didn't drink.
Uh-huh.
But we went to Tel Aviv and went to not a USO, but it was a dance.
Mm-hmm.
And I've got pictures. I'll show you a picture of that album I have. Very pretty Jewish girls we danced with. And I was a pretty good dancer then. And we had a good time. And then we asked the colonel if we could go to Bethlehem and Jerusalem. He said, well, if you want to, go ahead. He said, I'll get you a GI truck.
Mm.
And he did.
Wow.
And 6 of us took a tour of Bethlehem, Jerusalem, Nazareth, Sea of Galilee. We saw everything.
Wow.
We were there 6 days. And, I mean, there were just a few of us, and it was a wonderful experience. And I know since then, Mom and I have been there 3 times. And so, so I've made 4 trips to the Holy Land in my life. So.
When you went back for the first time, after, recently, what was it, 15 years ago or 20 years ago?
It was 1979.
Did you remember much about when you had been there in the service?
Yes, yeah, I did. This time we didn't ride a camel. I did that. Camel was not the greatest thing. So we sidetracked a little bit, but so how much time we got?
Let me just look here.
All right. Chris had to leave for a minute, so I'm just going to try to continue, and they're going to drive back to Flagstaff today, so they're here for the Christmas holidays, and Chris wanted me to talk about this, and Dorothy got a new camera, so we're trying it out. But the next target I had was got credit for 2, it was 23rd and 24th mission, was Munich, Germany. And the opposition was heavy, the intense and accurate flak, and the P-38s and P-51s covered us beautifully. We didn't get any fighter attacks. H hour this morning was about 5 a.m. and our altitude over the target was 26,000 feet. We flew ship 190, lost 1 engine over the target by flak, and landed with a flat tire. No casualties. There were 350 guns, and I believe there were a lot more as they hit us with everything but the kitchen sink. I never thought I could squeeze so much of myself into my little flak helmet. The 25th and 26th mission were to hit a target in Brux in Czechoslovakia. It was a synthetic oil refinery and plant, and there we had, again, the P-51s and P-38s. They were remarkable. I stopped and talked about those planes. One time, our plane came back, our crew came back 7 times all by itself, having been shot up so badly that we couldn't keep up with the squadron and the formation. And once that happened, the fighters just had their pick. I mean, because even one fighting fighter plane or 2 could shoot down a B-17 or any other plane. So 7 times we were in that position, and every time those planes saved us life. One time, I'm spinning around on my turret, looking for fighters, and I did that all the time because that's how I went blind one time. I'm looking into the sun for fighters, and when we got back base, and the next morning I couldn't see. I was blind for 3 days. But so this one time I looked, I thought, oh my Lord, I saw 11 Me-109s coming at us. Me-109s was a Messerschmitt, one of the German's best airplanes, best fighters. And I just yelled over the intercom, like, Jim, there's 11. And so we all got ready. And then I'm swinging my turret, and I looked up, and here are P-51s. I don't know how many are dogfights, and I believe they were the Tuskegee airmen, the black pilots, and it was just wonderful that they took all those fighters for us. We wouldn't have had a chance. One other time, one other target, the same thing. That's it, we came back 7 times all by ourselves, but one other time, same thing happened. I'm looking around, and this time there were Focke-Wulf 190s. That was another German fighter. There were 9 of them coming at us. And exactly the same thing happened, but this time there were P-38s that were watching over us. We didn't see them. They were way above there looking for fighters and protecting us, and we didn't even know it. But same thing happened. Not a fighter got through to us, and so we came back safely that time too. So, that was a sideline. I'm not sure I've even got that in my notes here, but on this, when we hit this target, I say HR was 430. It's like an hour, half an hour. We used to get with 330. We flew at 27,000 feet over the target. We lost 1 engine, number 1. Today, and again, we landed with a flat tire, the tail wheel. After leaving the target, we lost altitude and lost the formation. Oh, here it is. I didn't know how to know it. It saw 11 enemy fighters. However, 13 P-38s. Oh, I know it's mixed up here. There were P-38s that took care of them, and they chased them away. Boy, those escorts never looked so good. My next mission was my 28th, October 10th, 1944, Northern Italy. There were marshalling yards. I'll explain what a marshalling yard is. We again flew number 421 this morning. There were 16 to 20 guns and reported, and so we sort of a no gun, but our waist gunner got hit by a piece of flak, but it didn't even scratch him because it didn't go through his suit. We flew at an altitude of 23,000 feet. Next mission was October 12th, 1944. It was our 29th, and it was Bologna, Italy. It's called, I used to say Bologna because it's B-O-L-O-G-N-A. It was in northern Italy because Italy was not completely in our hands yet. Northern Italy was still in enemy hands. We had P-38s as escorts, and
I'll be on this side.
I'm recording now, so,
You are?
mm-hmm,
Sit down.
I'm recording,
Okay.
so sit down and everybody smile
you
for the
have a
camera, and
nice
I'm
voice.
coming right over there to get in the picture. Because I think this is a momentous occasion.
I didn't even comb my hair.
Well, I'm not going to say a word. Hi, everybody. This is a continuation of the tapes that we made of the experience of Bob King when he was in World War II.
The Adventures of
The
World War
Adventures.
II by Bob King.
And this is tape number 2. And we're just going to let him reminisce, and Chris is going to ask him some questions every once in a while.
And
just to
Dorothy and I are going to go outside and have our drink.
have a drink.
Yep.
Cheers, cheers, and here's
Cheers.
to everybody.
And we're having a drink while we make the tape.
So,
right.
I know that comes as no surprise to anybody
Okay.
watching this
here we
tape.
go.
All right.
Cheers.
Cheers.
We love you all.
Good.
You can talk to the tape.
Well, when we finished the last time, we started this little show. We finished up with started my 29th mission in a B-17, and I flew. Well, they were called missions. Later they were called sorties, but we'll get into that later. But I think first we were talking about the bombing mission was on October 12th, 1944, and
Which mission was this, Dad? Now, what number?
The 29th.
The 29th.
Yes.
Okay.
Because we covered the others, I think, pretty well.
Yeah.
And we were bombing northern Italy in a place called Bologna. I think it was Bologna.
Uh-huh.
And the target was a bivouac area. And they were really heavy flak. We didn't see any fighters, but they had about 150 guns, anti-aircraft guns, and that's a lot of guns.
So a bivouac area was probably an area where the enemy was just sort of...
No, actually, we sort of helped out the infantry on this one. I'm going to read, because I'd written it down.
Wow.
We helped out the infantry because as soon as we hit the area, a big offensive was started, timed to the minute to coincide with our attack. And it seemed as though we never would get out of that flak. There was a lot of it. But we had to follow the line horizontally because we didn't want to hit our troops. And I mean, people down there, they were fighting each other. You know, our troops were fighting the enemy.
Yeah.
And it was just lined up with our guns. So we really had a hot target. We got hit very badly, and whoever called it a milk run, and they said it was going to be a milk run, it should have been in our shoes and in our plane.
So you were expecting a milk run?
Yes, that's what they said it was going to be.
Yeah.
But it wasn't. Then on October the 13th, which was the next day, we flew our 30th and 31st mission. Now, sometimes because of the length of the target and the severity of the target, you got credit for 2 missions instead of 1. We got 2 on this one because we hit a target in Bleckhammer, Germany, and they were oil refineries like they had in Pulaski.
I remember you had mentioned you had bombed that before, hadn't you?
Oh yes, but Bleckhammer was a what's a little note that I had, I think.
Oh yeah.
But I put in my little diary, the opposition was heavy, the flak was intense, and but we were fortunate because we didn't see any fighters. And many times when we bombed an area, we didn't see fighters, but they were watching over us, and our fighters watched over us. But many times they were there, but because this time I said we had an escort of P-51 and P-38s. We bombed by instrument, so we couldn't tell whether we did a good job or not. But no remarks other than it was another rough one, and glad to have it in back of me. The next day, the 14th, October 14th, was my 32nd mission. And we went to Hungary, and we bombed marshalling yards. That's where they, all the trains and so forth get together and they go from there. And there's a lot of activity in all countries in marshalling yards. Again, heavy, accurate flak, but again, fortunately, no fighters because we had P-51s and P-38s protecting us. We headed for Bleckhammer, but weather prevented us from getting there, so we made a 360-degree turn and hit a little target of opportunity. And it seems so we never could get out of the flak. There were anti-aircraft guns called 88s and 105s, and my notes say I was very scared. It should have been a double, but it was one of those tough breaks, and we only received a single mission. We landed with a hydraulic fluid all gone, and a line had been hit, and we only had 1 application of the brakes. And luckily, that was enough. However, we didn't get back to the hard stand, but left the plane at the end of the runway. Our brakes were no good. The next day, not the next day, but October the 17th, I flew my 34th and 35th mission. The target again was Bleckhammer, Germany, and the target, we never reached the target, but bombed a small marshalling yard nearby instead. No fighter opposition, and so we headed for Bleckhammer, and the weather closed in on us, and we hit a small marshmallow yard, and then on the way back, we ran out of gas. We almost had to ditch in the Adriatic. By ditching, we land in the Adriatic and swim.
Your plane almost, you almost had to ditch it.
We
The
ran
plane
out of
you were
gas.
on.
But we just made land, and we landed on a fighter field where we refueled and flew back to the field. They already had us listed as missing in action because they thought we'd been shot down.
Wow. Now, why did you run out of fuel?
We got a fuel line. It was hit by some of the flak. We got a fuel line, and
Oh, okay.
we lost gas.
You probably said that, and I was
Well, no, I don't
messing
think I
with the
did.
machine. Oh.
So on October the 18th, I received the Air Medal today. It's an award for participation in aerial combat against the enemy over Europe.
And this was October 15th?
October the 18th.
18th.
And that was, I received the Air Medal, and then I received three more clusters. So actually I got 4 Air Medals during my time over there. The 36th and 37th mission was October the 20th in 1944. Here we hit Regensburg in Germany, and it was an oil refinery. The light flak and no fighters, so it was our first mission as lead crew in a Charlie squadron. And we now only fly every 4th time, and that the squadron flies, so our missions became slower, and from now on, we flew a radar ship, which means that our ball turret gunner will not fly with us anymore, because that's where they had the radar equipment in the ball turret.
Mm-hmm.
Our 38th and 38th mission on November 17th, 1944, was Salzburg, Germany. Well, actually it's in Austria. Marshalling yards again this time, and heavy, accurate flak. This morning we headed for Brux, B-R-U-X, but a very strong headwind proved too much for us, and we realized we'd never make it, so we bombed the first alternate, which was Salzburg.
Now, the reason you wouldn't have made it was because you wouldn't have had enough fuel, because the headwind forces the plane to use more fuel.
Mm-hmm. And but it wasn't too bad, but it was by far not a milk run. The 39th and 40th mission, November 22nd, 1944. Again, we hit Munich, Germany, and marshalling yards. The opposition was moderate, flak, weather was very bad, and we couldn't see very much, just whether we hit the targets or not. We were escorted by P-51s and P-38s.
Now, first of all, Dad, how many total missions did you?
I had 54 total missions.
54. So you're 3/4 of the way through at this point with the number of missions.
Yeah. Now, I think I qualified, I said at the beginning that we used to fly missions and then they changed them to sorties. So actually, I flew 35 sorties, 35 times over a target.
Mm-hmm.
But some of them were so bad, so long, that we got credit for more. So actually, I got credit. See, they changed this from missions to sorties when we were almost through, and I think I've got a note in here.
But we're still talking missions here, and you know, I noticed that last time though you went from October 20th to November 20th or something like that. I don't remember.
Because the weather it was the winter time, and a lot of rain, a lot of snow, and we didn't have concrete runways. We took off and landed on steel mesh, and when it was so wet and it was soft, and you couldn't do it. You couldn't fly.
Not enough traction or whatever, because it was
right into the mud.
Oh.
So the 8th Air Force out of England, flying out of England, all had concrete runways and so forth. But in Italy, We didn't have that luxury.
So they would put down this steel mesh
Right.
on top of the ground.
Yes, exactly.
And
then when there was weather
when
so
it
bad, you couldn't.
rained, it would cover that up, or the water would create
Yes.
mud
Yes.
on that mesh, and you
planes
couldn't.
were heavy, and you couldn't you couldn't take off or land on them.
It was probably more of a landing problem
Yes, I would
than
think
it
so.
was a takeoff
You're right,
problem, huh?
right.
So,
Yeah. Checking it. So now we'll come up to the 39th and 40th mission. So we got credit for 2 in this particular one because it was Munich, Germany again, and the marshalling yards.
mhm.
And there were tough targets, but the flak wasn't too bad. The weather was very bad, and we couldn't see too much what but anyway, we flew today at the highest I've ever flown in altitude. It was better than 29,000 feet.
Mm.
Now, today, when the aircraft is all enclosed and air conditioned and everything else, we didn't have that luxury. We had open windows in the waist. There was no windows. It was just an open for the guns to stick out.
Yeah.
And we wore heated suits and heated shoes underneath the fleece-lined boots and the fleece-lined jackets and so forth.
Mhm.
So it was, when you fly at 29,000 feet, it's pretty cold up there.
How were they heated with electric?
Yes, yes.
Were you plugged into
Yes,
something?
Yes, yes, like that.
So your suit was actually plugged into.
Yes, and I think I told, we talked about it the last time, I'm not sure, about one time, unbeknown to me, the piece of the flak lifted our plane 3 times.
Mhm.
And really, and suddenly not too suddenly, shortly after that, my teeth started to chatter, and I started to shake, and I talked to myself. I said, I know you're scared, but you're not a coward, so get hold of yourself. And I kept talking to myself. And it wasn't until we got back toward our base that I got out of my turret and found out that one of those times that the plane was lifted, really, my heated suit plug had been unplugged. And it was probably 50 below zero.
So did you when they plugged it back in, or you plugged it back in, did you immediately feel the heat
Well, I
and
didn't
know
plug
that?
it back in. There was no need to then because I didn't discover it until we were down.
Oh, I see.
So, yeah.
Okay.
But it was one of those funny things, but it wasn't funny.
So this mission, you hit your highest altitude of what?
29,000 feet.
And that's without any oxygen, or?
Oh, no, we had oxygen.
That's right.
Well, we always wore oxygen masks.
Yeah, you have to have oxygen
Oh, yeah.
up that high.
Oh, yeah.
That's right.
Yeah. No, we wore oxygen masks.
Yeah.
So those heated, and I say 29,000 feet, those heated suits work wonders. And I didn't get cold, although it was better than 40 below. The weather was as thick as soup, so if the flak was heavy, it wasn't noticeable. Hope to God I can just hold out 5 more like today. These are in my notes. On the 41st mission, I flew it on February 1st, 1945. We bombed Graz, Austria, G-R-A-Z, and again, marshalling yards. We had a lot of those. Light flak and inaccurate, but the weather was really bad. We flew, plane number 279. Our planes were numbered. We didn't have names on them. Like they flew out of England, they put their own names. We had numbers on our planes. So we flew different planes most of the time. The plane we flew over, our crew flew over when we went overseas, was shot down at its first mission. We went on it, thank goodness, but we flew different planes. And after a rough takeoff, we finally got in the air. Another ship crashed on takeoff, and we were headed for Moosburg, but we hit Graz as an alternate and really sweat out the weather. Otherwise, it wasn't too bad. These were all from my notes that I took when I got back. So,
Yeah.
Because I don't, after all these years, I don't remember 2 months.
But were you writing these on a
When I got
daily
back,
basis?
yes,
Yeah,
yeah.
you come back from the mission and
Yeah.
that night you
And
would,
I sat down my notebook and.
okay.
And I have another book with things that happened to me other than missions.
Right.
This is it. So,
Yeah.
my 42nd and 43rd mission, we hit Vienna, Austria. And then, again, marshalling yards. Flak was light and it was inaccurate. Today we were really sweating it out as we made 2 runs over the target. The flak was light and mighty lucky for me because I didn't have a chance to put on my flak suit. We wore flak vests. I couldn't, and I have a little helmet that I had. The others had big helmets in the back of the waist, but I couldn't get my head up in the trigger with a big one. Neither could the volunteer gunner.
And these flak vests, they were kind of like the bulletproof vest that
yes.
police wear
Yeah,
today
but
or
they
something.
were heavy.
They were
heavy.
They were heavy?
Yes. But the new colonel flew as co-pilot. His name was Colonel Kincaid, and he, in that mission, finished up our radio operator, Don Clark. So our radio man got back with, he got back with no holes, so that finished up his missions. And I don't know if I probably said it earlier, on one of these missions, I was looking into the sun for fighters, and the next day I couldn't see, and I was blind for 3 days, so my crew flew and I didn't. And,
Yeah.
So he finished up his mission. The 44th and 45th mission was February the 15th, 1945. Again, we went to Vienna, Austria. Again, marshalling yards. This was a terrible time for us, though, because we were flying number 4 in the Baker Squadron, they call it, when I looked up, the bomb bay doors were open, and there was a squadron of our own planes flying over the top of us. Navigator or pilot or someone made a terrible mistake. And suddenly I yelled over the intercom to my pilot. I said, Jim, I said, there's a squadron of planes right over us and the bombs are coming. And with that, the ship, we were shot up pretty badly. So instead of being where we should have been, in tight formation, we should have been right there. But we were shot up very badly, and we were down here. This plane took a direct hit and blew up one of the bombs, and 10 men just blew up. And, our plane took a hit, but one of the bombs went through the leading edge of our wing, and that plane shook, and oh, it was scary.
So this was a plane that was dropping its bombs accidentally
yes.
on you.
Well, the target was below us, but
right.
we were, yeah, there was a mistake. And so it almost took us.
And when you say you were shot up pretty good,
Yeah, back.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
You mean your plane had been hit?
Oh, yes. Oh,
from the ground?
Every time, yes. We always got hit.
Okay.
And sometimes we had fires in the waist. We had the fuel lines that were hit, and, different things. So the 46th and 47th mission was February 18th, 1945. And again, we went to Linz, Austria, and they were marshalling yards again. And for some reason or other, that is the end of my little diary here, but let me look and see.
I'm going to pause this, Dad, okay?
The notes that I had were made a little diary I kept, and for some reason or other I must have switched to another book because I have to pick it up with another little book that I kept talking about other things besides missions. But on February 19th and 20th, we all just, well, I said on February 18th, we had 47 missions, and so 4 more sorties to go for me. On February 19th and 20th, we just hung around and did nothing. We didn't fly. I went to church, in my notes here, I went to church every night. And on February the 21st, ball turret gunner flew and finished up having a pretty rough one. They bombed Vienna. And
That was his last mission?
it was his last mission, so he finished up. Now, there was a fellow that, when our waist gunner was killed, Edward Sell, we had a replacement, and I think I mentioned it probably, Johnny Romano. We called him Lucky Johnny because when his plane, he didn't fly one day and this plane blew up with the whole crew, so he was replaced the one that was killed in our ship. And so on February 21st, when Kogo flew, Johnny Romano and I went to town, and then we went to church at night. I volunteered to fly on the February 22nd as a waist gunner. And because when you're not flying, my crew had all finished except me, so you had sort of had, you volunteered to fly and they put you wherever they needed somebody. So I flew on the 22nd, I flew as a waist gunner, and lucky enough for me, we had a milk run. And I sat on the floor throwing out chaff, C-H-A-F-F, and when you did that, it was a device, metallic strips and so forth, and it would throw off the anti-aircraft remote for some, so they couldn't track you well enough. So that was my job. I threw out from the waist. But on the 22nd, February 22nd, I went again and volunteered, and I was put in as a tail gunner. Just doing all this because everyone in my crew is finished, and Romano will finish on this one. We went to Bruck, Austria. The flak was light, but plenty accurate. Those bursts seemed to be right at the end of my guns, and so loud it almost hurt my ears. I was flying in the tail. That wasn't my position.
Probably did hurt your ears.
Oh yeah. We were lucky though, and only collected a couple of holes in the tail, but I really sweated it out because, and it says here, and I was scared, plenty scared.
Plenty scared.
Romano finished okay. February 24th, last night, was put on a crew as engineer. So again, got up for H hour, that's when they woke us up to go out and fly. And I was very tired. We started out to go to Verona in Italy. There were 158 anti-aircraft guns reported, and they were 105, not the 88, so they were bigger. And I have after that, wow. However, we hit an alternate instead of going to Klagenfurt, Austria, and had a nice milk run, no flak. However, I really sweat that mission out and worrying that we were going where we were going. This piled up my 52nd mission and my 34th sortie. Tonight I didn't volunteer, but found out that I was to fly tail gunner again. And February 25th, this was the big day. I flew with Lieutenant Huey and men of Brown's crew, friends of mine, who were also finishing up their mission, so we sort of flew in the same plane. We heard we were heading for Linz, Austria, and boy, we started to sweat. And we had good reason to. That tail was rough as blazes as we hit plenty of prop wash. Now prop wash is, you're in the back end and you're getting all that wind from the other planes, and the flak was heavy and accurate, and it says in my little notes, I curled myself up in a little ball back there and just prayed after seeing what we just went through. I wondered how we had made it without getting hit too badly. Able Squadron really took a beating that day, losing a ship. We almost lost the ship in Charlie Squadron. Bissonette, a swell fellow and a swell crew member, it was a mission to finish on that had us all sweating and praying. we shot off 3 flares when we hit the ground, and what a wonderful feeling. Now we just have to sweat out a couple of months, and then I should be going home.
So the flares were like a celebration?
Right, right. Normally, when you shot off a flare when you were landing, that meant you had a wounded person on board. But this was in celebration because it was our last one.
It was your last,
last one.
Your last mission?
Yeah. So from then on, it's just a sort of things of what we did. And I, 26th of February, I said, I got up this morning feeling like a new man. I had a good breakfast of fried eggs, and what a surprise. I took a well-needed shower and received 10 letters. We had to move in the afternoon. They put all of us fellows that had finished in a tent by ourselves. 12 of us are crowded together now. I just missed going on orders with Romano, my police gunner. The rest, so now have to wait for another week here. That means I'll leave around March 15th.
Now, now what do you mean when you said a minute ago you received 10 letters?
Well, I received from home.
Oh, 10 letters
yeah,
in one day?
Well, they were followed up. I mean, they weren't all from one day, but
Okay.
they got them all at once.
Who was sending you letters?
Oh, my mother, and I used to get letters from a gal that I met in Florida, and another gal that I'd met in Salt Lake City.
Mm-hmm.
They used to write to me.
Mm-hmm.
So it was long before I knew Mom.
Yeah.
But then on February 27th, I went over and had my picture taken to go with the story that's being written up about me and my missions by the PR man.
And what, did they send those articles to your
local,
hometown or
yes,
something?
the newspaper. So
Mm-hmm.
it appears in, and I've got in my book of memories, I've got the article, and it was quite a
And
good article.
what paper was it in?
It was in the, I can't remember the name of the newspaper.
Was it
Schenectady. The Schenectady Union Star or...
Okay, okay.
I forgot.
Yeah.
But, so, then on the 28th, Romano and I went into town, we saw a movie, had some donuts, spent some of the usual day in good old Foggia.
What's Foggia?
Well, I was stationed.
Oh.
That was Foggia.
Oh, okay.
Wasn't much of a place. It had been bombed out by us and by the Germans, and it was not a good place to go, but it was the only place we had.
And where was this again?
It was in Italy,
Oh.
southern Italy.
And Romano, your friend,
Yeah.
he must have been Italian.
Yes, oh, he was.
So
Yeah, he was from New York City.
did he? He didn't speak
Oh, no, I don't know. if
the
he did or
language?
not. No, I don't think so. But on March 1st, I got up and I got paid $141.70. And that's about the only eventual thing that took place that day. But then I lost track. I've gone, it's now March 8th, and I haven't kept this up because I do the same thing day in and day out, you know, just waiting to go.
Wondering how, maybe there's not even recording. Is it recording?
Yeah. Hold on one second, Dad, okay?
All right.
That was the record. It is recording now. Wes, you're on tape right now.
Okay.
So
Here, Wes, it's...
wave. Oh, now we got Grandma's butt.
I don't know why he has that all hooked up that way. If you just left it plugged in, it doesn't do that. If you pull it very hard, the whole thing comes out.
Where's the little remote? Oh, here it is.
Okay, here's Annie looking at her digital camera with her reading glasses on, and it's Thanksgiving weekend, and we're all having a lot of fun. Yahoo!